You're listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast. I'm Mike Luke, joined by the great William Brad Allis. Hello, William. How you doing?
Doing well, Michael.
All right. How's the summer treating you so far? I know the kids are out of school. How's this? How are these weeks going?
Not too bad. They actually started a middle school transition program. Basically, they go to the junior high and take a few elective type classes and get used to the campus. So they're doing that now. Start of summer also means the start of all-star baseball preparation. So we're at 5 days a week with practice, and we'll start up volleyball here next week or so. So busy.
All right. Well, speaking of something that looks like it's about settled, Arizona's basketball roster is pretty much settled. Paulius Marurauskas will be the last one, or Marauskas. We'll get to that there in just a minute, Brad. But overall, considering what Tommy Lloyd was dealing with, considering the crushing Ryan Nembhard decision, I got to say that he aced this offseason. He lost Ryan Nembhard, but you know what? He went and he got Caleb Love, Jaden Bradley, and Kashad Johnson. I say good on Tommy Lloyd.
Yeah, I think when you look at it, assuming you couldn't get Jaden Bradley and Caleb Love, if you got Nembhard, I think it's a net gain.
Right.
Is Nembhard a surer thing than both of those guys? Yes, he is. We're not going to deny that. But I think in a weird way, one, Nembhard is less of a threat to Boswell mentally. You know, and he's a young guy. Two, you get
Bradley.
No, I mean Boswell. Damn Bradley. Nembhard, I think if you're Kylan Boswell, you could see like, why are they bringing in this guy?
Right. Okay, I got you.
I thought I earned this job. What do I think he would have been scared? No, but I think when you bring in although they're both point guards, I think in an odd way, Jaden Bradley is more of a complimentary point guard than when you bring in Caleb Love, who's a pure scorer.
Right.
In many ways, you're telling Boswell, yeah, we have complete confidence in you running this offense or being our number 2 or 3 scorer. Whereas I think if you bring in Nembhard, what you are doing is it could be perceived as a bit of a threat. Not saying Boswell is going to take it that way, but you can see it that way. Plus, now you get maybe 2 years of Caleb Love, certainly 1. You get 2-3 years maybe of Jaden Bradley, because in most scenarios, Nembhard looked like he's probably trying to jump next year. So again, net gain. Would Nembhard help you? Absolutely. I'm not going to pretend like, oh, they dodged the bullet on that one, but
yeah, man, we didn't want that guy.
But it certainly could have been a lot worse. And in this case, it may wind up, it may not, we'll never know, being a better, I guess if Nembhard beats Arizona in the Sweet 16 or Elite 8, then it didn't work. But
right.
Other than that, you look at it, and again, I think it's a net positive.
All right, now let's talk about this backcourt a little bit here, and then we're going to get to we got a lot of stuff to get to. We're going to talk maybe a Gardner Arenas backcourt 2.0, some Elijah Rushing, where Arizona falls in all this. But I talked about this previously throughout the week. Honestly, Brad, I needed 2 things this offseason. I needed ball handling and I needed toughness, and Arizona got both of those right there. And again, that to me is really where we were going to find out what Tommy Lloyd was made of, and he did exactly that.
Yeah, I mean, the roster construction, with the exception of that pure athletic, tall, long wing.
Your Richard Jefferson type is not on the roster.
Type. That's the only thing this roster is lacking. You've got skilled big men, you've got bruising big men, you've got shooters, you've got slashers, you've got dogs, to quote Mike Luke on Twitter today. You've got 2 guys who played in the national.
Great Rich Carrillo.
Yeah, I like Rich a lot. You got 2 guys who played in a national title game. You've got guys with international experience. You've got 5-star guys who are on a redemption tour. So you got a little bit of everything. Again, maybe the only thing, in fact, if Krivas is anywhere what he appears on YouTube, you've got the lanky shot blocker to go along with Balo's bruisers, to go along with the undersized yet tenacious Johnson. So again, You have everything but that long, super athletic wing. Now, the kid who I guess we're going to assume is on the roster might be able to fill some of that role. He's not the pure athlete that a Matherin or Jefferson is, but could be a 6'8" small forward who can give you some length on the perimeter, or, he goes to the 4 and you move Johnson out, because athletically Johnson, I think, can play the 3. He just isn't that shooter slasher that you want at that position. But
I'm with you, Brad. I'm with you on this. Let's talk about Marauskas here. Again, I watched a little bit of his film, and whatever I've watched, everybody else out there has watched. It's not like the staff is feeding me film or something. But I'm kind of with you. I'm kind of with you a little bit, though. That yes, he looks good, but I'm also going to take it a little bit with a grain of salt, being that you already got your 6 rotation. You got 6 rotation guys who we'll get to here in a second, obviously, but. I don't know quite what to expect here with him. Again, the film looks solid, but it's not like it blows you away, though, either.
That's where I'm at. In fact, to me, and again, reviewing guys on film with that limited is really tough.
Right.
You know, I liked back in the day when I used to be able to get out there, and that's why I can take a lot of pride that I've only been wrong maybe twice.
Right.
But I was very wrong on those occasions. But the point is, does not appear wildly athletic on film. He's got a good outside shot, but it does appear to have a little hitch in it. Mm-hmm. I think Krivas looks like the sure thing. Now, I will say this: I think Krivas has a higher floor and a lower ceiling.
Right.
You know, I think, are we calling it Marauskas? Is a guy I think, again, if he
we could call him Paulie M.
Paulie M.
We got Philly B and Paulie M.
If he maximizes what he's shown on tape, then those people who said he could be a second rounder this year are going to be right. But my guess is he is probably, along with Krivas, fighting for the 9th man, or what I call the 8.5 man minutes.
Right.
I think, you know, again, if he proves he can play 2 positions, then that's going to help him. But my guess is he's not an instant big time impact guy. And that's probably a good thing. Because again, for most of these European guys or international guys in general, it takes a while to get acclimated to playing the American game and the culture and the education system and the social life and the language and all of it. It's not like, you know, you've been playing for the Compton Magic and you have to move 8 hours,
right.
8 hours from home. And, you know, 7 of the guys on the team, cause you played AAU ball with them,
right.
Or against them. You know, the culture shock from, you know, Van Nuys to Tucson, Arizona is not quite as, you know, wherever Riga, Lithuania, or wherever he's from, is going to be.
I think you're going to see this kind of roster breakdown right now, where you're going to have 5 international players and you're going to have 7 to 8 domestic players. I think that's kind of the template that Lloyd's going to be going for, because again, you looking at the guys you got Paulie M, you got Krivas, you got Philly B, you got Conrad Martinez, and you got Henry Vasar. Those are your 5 right there. I mean, if you want to count Pella as that, but Pella was also kind of domestic before then. But that's what I think the ratio is going to be. I think it's going to be 1 or 2 more Americans at internationals. I think that's kind of where Lloyd's going with this.
Well, I think there's a few things you look at, and I'm doing broad generalities. To recruit an American player, you pretty much have to get started somewhere between his 8th grade and sophomore year.
Right.
And that's summer into, in reality. We're going to be talking about a couple of young guys in a few minutes who, you know, one's a freshman to be and one's a sophomore to be. Mm-hmm. You are then going to recruit them for the next 3 or 4 years.
Right.
It's a lot of time. It's a lot of money. Then if you can land them verbally, then you got to sweat out the G League. Then you've got to sweat out a last-minute decommit. You get him on campus and everything doesn't go right, then he's going into the transfer portal right away. With the international players, while you are scouting them very early, you really aren't, from my understanding, let's say this changed, you don't really start recruiting them until about 6 months out, 8 months out, because of the connections to the pro team. And what you have to do is then talk to that pro team or whatever the club team, shall we say, because we know they're not professionals. And figure out, is he so good he's getting promoted to the A team and going to be paid his $800,000 or go right to the NBA draft? Or do we want him to go to America and get some seasoning? And then in general, generalities, the European players seem to be more loyal because they've been brought up through a club system. You don't jump club teams in Europe very often like you do AAU teams, like you do high schools. I mean, no offense to Carter Bryant, great kid. Isn't he on his 3rd high school?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And again, some of that's because his dad's a coach and has changed jobs. I don't want to, but there's a reason.
It's a different mentality. It's just a different way about maneuvering around the landscape, for sure.
There's a reason Adama Ball stuck it out 2 years. There's a reason Philly B didn't bolt yet.
Right.
And some of that is they've kind of been directed by their clubs to come and play for Tommy Lloyd. That's where they want him, and Ricardo Foy and Jack Murphy. So, long story short, yeah, you want all these American players, and you're gonna. Let's say you have 7 American players, 3 will probably be transfers, 4 will probably be recruits, and then you're going to have the 5 internationals because you kind of know, barring an absolute disaster, they're going to be there 2 or 3 years.
We would take a baby Danilo Gallinari right there, because that means that he would be a lottery pick at some point and be in the NBA for 12 years. If he's a poor man's Danilo Gallinari, we will take that, Brad Allis.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, now let's talk about something that made me feel a little old and it's probably making Brad feel ancient here. But first, no matter what happens, no matter how many peaks are added, there will always be 4 peaks in the equation here. It could be 4 peaks plus 2, 4 peaks plus 1, whatever the case may be, and that's because 4 peaks isn't going anywhere. And that's because 4 Peaks is the official brew of PHNX Sports. Check out 4 Peaks Brew or 4 Peaks Pub to keep up with the latest on Arizona's homegrown brewery. You must be 21 years or older to drink 4 Peaks. Please drink responsibly and tap and bottle. The great William Brad Allis has been to the tap and bottle watch parties. Everybody in the Tucson sports scene has heard or seen William Brad Allis before. And you know what? If Brad's going there, that is a sign that you should go there as well. Check it out. Tap and bottle. Support local. Scott and Rebecca do a great job downtown or on the Northwest location. You might be able to spot Brad Allis. And it's a family spot because Brad's gone there solo and he's brought the children as well. Check it out right there. All right, Brad. I put this tweet out there yesterday or earlier today, and it made me feel old, but it also made me excited. Jason Gardner and Gilbert Arenas, in my opinion, is the 3rd best backcourt in school history. Is that fair?
Who are we putting ahead of them? Okay, Bibby Simon.
Bibby Simon and Damon and Khalid.
Okay, yeah, 3rd best. Yeah.
3rd best backcourt. All right.
Yeah.
And you could argue that certainly the most precocious, being that they were freshmen that did that. So, and then sophomores, obviously. Yeah. Elijah Arenas, kid out of California. Gilbert Arenas' son has a U of A offer. He averaged about 10,000 points per game at Chatsworth High School this past year. Jason Gardner's son is in Tucson. Now there's speculation about whether it'll be at Catfoot or South Point. I heard Catfoot, but again, don't take that one to the bank right there. It could be either one. But I've also heard that he's probably closing in on a U of A offer at some point. First of all, Brad, how old did this make you feel? Second of all, how cool would that be theoretically to have another Gardner-Arenas backcourt?
Oddly enough, it doesn't make me feel old.
Really?
Because when I started covering them, I was only in my mid to late 20s.
Okay.
So I'm less than 10 years older than those guys. So the fact that they have kids who are actually older than mine in a weird way doesn't bother me nearly as much as guys older than them who have kids already playing.
Right.
Or even, so for a weird reason, it doesn't make me feel as old because I'm like, oh, Jason Gardner Jason's got to be 43, 42. That's my guess. And his kid's basically 2 years older than my kids, and I got a late start. So it doesn't freak me out nearly as much as then when I'm like, oh, wait.
Jervis Williams being mean to William Brad Allis right here because he's already old. Jervis, that was mean but appropriate. Go ahead there, Brad.
I'm an old man. But yeah, there are some guys who I covered in recruiting whose kids are already like in college and in the league, and that makes me feel old. Or the fact that there's a couple sons of guys I grew up watching who are now coaches.
Right.
So not only are their dads coach, but I'm like, oh, the kid's a coach now. Now I feel old. But yeah, Jason and Gilbert. The fact that Gilbert is not perpetually 22 is kind of weird because
You would always imagine that he would be perpetual. Hey, you went farther than I would have been. I would have said perpetually about 18.
Yeah, I might be giving him too many. But whereas Jason Gardner was always fairly serious and older, acted older.
Right.
We did for Cat Tracks, the old magazine. We did a thing where we went to their house and watched them play video games.
Keep talking. I got something cool to show you. Keep talking.
First of all, Gilbert had no filter, as you would be shocked to hear. Oh yeah. The one we did was a Batman and Robin issue where I actually used my own.
I have that one as well.
But we went and we sat in their bedroom and watched them play NCAA, whatever it was, 99 maybe 2000. And Gilbert said a lot of things he shouldn't. Jason got very mad because he lost,
right?
And it was a perfect representation of what you'd expect from them, although we had to edit the article to keep Gilbert from burying some teammates.
All right. I could certainly see that. What I do like about what Lloyd is doing here, and by the way, I'm going to chew on this one for a second, as should you, Brad Allis. Who's number 4 backcourt, Kurt? I think there's got to be somebody in there. And again, Kerr's obviously an all-time great, but
I will tell you mine.
Who's your number 4?
Gardner Salim.
Oh yeah, duh.
Yeah.
Gardner and Salim, easy for sure, no doubt.
Yeah, and just because I'm an avowed Salim fanboy.
Well, and let's be honest, Craig McMillan did a lot of great things here. Salim was on a different pedestal. Kurt
McMillan, pretty spectacular. Just you're also looking a little bit at NBA pedigree, but I'll take Gardner and Salim. But if you want to take Kerr and McMillan, I'm not going to fight you.
All right, now let's talk about Tommy Lloyd offering guys early now. I like this strategy right here. I think that, and again, I'm not going to beat up Tommy Lloyd because, again, like I always say, I'm sitting here with a podcast just talking in my living room while he's the winningest coach in college history through the first 2 years. That must be said. By the way, KB Thiel says, what about the Dylan Smith-Nico Mannion backcourt? Doesn't quite make the list.
Is it sad that I have fonder memories of Dylan than Nico?
No, I do too. I didn't hate Dylan the way that a lot of people did. I was, if you took Dylan for what he was, it was all right. But
perfectly fine.
What I like though is that the Tommy gun is now offering guys early. Now, I do think that when he came to Arizona, I think there was a little bit of a strategy that, we can offer guys whenever we want. We're Arizona, and I think that came back to bite him a little bit. But let's just talk about Elijah Arenas for a second here. This is when you start getting offers from UCLA and schools like that in Southern California as a freshman and you're a legacy kid, that's a no-brainer type offer right there. Because the thing about it, Brad, let's just say that he totally plateaus and pulls an Eric Cooper Jr. or something. You could always slow play and back off of that recruitment right there. It's kind of like if asking out three different women, and the one that you were hoping didn't really want her to – the third one right there, you slow play until the first or the second one offer. That's probably a terrible comparison, but you get my point there, Brad.
You've somehow fallen into me loving dating analogies for recruiting, but I'm going to give you this one. Okay, let's say you offer him, and let's say he commits tomorrow, and let's say he plateaus.
Yeah.
What is he? 3-star?
Right.
150th kid in the class?
Could still be a very productive.
Can't be your 13th. Can't be your 13th guy,
right? Because
guess what? Until this year, they've never filled all the.
He can't be Conrad Martinez.
It's like when some people are like, I can't. I don't like. I'm not like you have to recruit every kid in Tucson, but if you throw an offer at a Tucson kid and he takes it and he's the 25th guy in the class, okay,
right?
If Jordan, like I use this, some people are like, I don't know about Jordan Morgan. I'm like, okay, let's say Jordan Morgan sucked, and he did. Jordan Morgan's great. At worst, you bring in the best kid in Tucson, you keep him in town, and he's your 25th kid in the class. Right. Just like every once in a while, they're like, I'd much rather you offer, let's say the kid from Modern Day they got yesterday, Tuialamaka, is no good.
Right.
At the end of the day, you're bringing in a 6'4", 330-pound Polynesian kid from Modern Day High School as your 25th kid.
Yes.
So at the very least, to use your dating analogy, the girl with the lazy eye, but the nice body. So you take her out to dinner and you have a couple dinners, and then when the hotter chick says yes, you just okay. Sorry, I lost your number.
it just kind of, it is what it is. But with Gilbert Arenas' kid, and you're seeing this now with a lot of kids in state where they're offering them early, whether that's a Cameron Holmes, who is probably going to become a no-brainer recruit, Duron Holmes' little brother. There's a lot of dudes like this, and the fact that an offer for Gardner could be right around the table as well. Obviously, they're looking at it. They're saying that we should go ahead and we should offer early, and especially because it can't. Here's the thing that I've always thought too. It can only hurt not offering a no-brainer kid early. It can't. It can only hurt not doing it that, because kids have a memory. Let's say the great Tyler Allis is being recruited by schools all over the country for what's Tyler's favorite sport?
Right now it's baseball. We'll see if it stays. He goes,
right,
to the Jedfish football camp in 2 weeks.
True. Let's say he's been recruited by Alabama, LSU, and all these schools for baseball. I think they're good. LSU I know is good, but whatever. And Arizona, for whatever reason, isn't offering him. You might still send him there, but you're also going to remember that why is the hometown school or the one that I have a connection with not offering? That will always be in the back of your head a little bit.
And it happened to Tommy a few times. I can tell you that with a certain quarterback from Saguaro who went to Cal.
I'm very familiar. Record.
Now, I would say this. Some of it I think is Tommy changed philosophy. Some of it is you have to remember. So Tommy Lloyd kind of gets the Arizona job late.
Yeah.
Has to come in, revamp the roster, keep the guys home, and survey the landscape. And sure, he was familiar with the landscape of college basketball recruiting. But there's a big difference between being the head coach and the lead assistant. Right. So the fact that he wasn't offering a bunch of guys, guess who else didn't offer a bunch of guys early the first year? Sean Miller. Right. Eventually, Sean Miller would. He'd start, throwing out offers at freshmen and sophomores. But he didn't do that right away because you've got to build the initial roster. You've got to get a jump start on – not even jump start. You're behind schedule because you've got to remember – you're always recruiting. It's not college football where you're still recruiting for that year. You're recruiting a year in advance. So the fact of the matter is he's just getting caught up in many ways. So now he can throw out those wider nets. And I think, yes, it might be a slight change in philosophy. I think it's also just finally getting your feet under you after what's basically a whirlwind 18 months.
Let's try to alleviate some of the concerns of the great Rich Carrillo right here. Rich is still worried about this team not being tough. And again, I like what all of Rich's points right there. And by the way, Rich, argue and disagree with me as much as you want. It's nothing personal. But I do think that this year's team coming up is going to be better than last year's team, strictly because, again, like we just talked about on Twitter, you got more dogs, you got more guys that I think people like Rich are looking for, that are more physical, that are going to embrace, a little grimier way of play. What say you, Brad?
You've also got a fuller roster.
Yeah.
Who was your 7th and 8th man last year? It was Vesar and Adama Ball. Vesar is probably still your 7th or 8th man, and Adama Ball is no longer in the program.
Right.
So, again, while I don't know if you're going to find anyone to duplicate Tubelis's numbers, you may have guys who are more capable of getting those on games where you need them. Where, because if Tubelis disappeared, you were in big trouble finding a second scorer. For sure. Or a first. And there were times when that happened. Yeah. And sometimes it wasn't his fault either. But you've got more options now. Again, less sure things. But, Caleb Love has scored points in a championship game and has led his team. I mean, he has 2 of the biggest victories in North Carolina history that he was the best player on the court for. The 2 wins over Coach K. How weird is that going to be for Duke fan when Arizona's going into Cameron this coming year and you got Caleb Love as one of your starting players on the perimeter? That's going to be great. I'm trying to think. I guess the comparison would be if Jaime Jaquez was on this year's Duke team or next year's Duke team coming to McHale. I mean, isn't that what it basically is? Right. Yeah, and what's funny is how many Carolina fans are all excited to see that game, too. No, but yeah, so there's still a lot of questions, but on paper, it looks really good. But your paper includes hard evidence. Caleb Love and Keshad Johnson played national title games. Right. Jaden Bradley was a key player for most of the season for the best team in America.
Right.
Who, again, you could argue, well, maybe the reason they flamed out, they weren't playing him enough.
That's what we're going with here. Alabama did flame out because they gave more minutes to Brandon Miller, and they took minutes away from Jaden Bradley. That's what I'm saying, Brad, and we're going to stick with it right now.
That's a great narrative for me as well. You know, plus you can argue, if you don't like the way Arizona played at the end of the year, well, why did Kyle and Boswell play 12 minutes against Princeton?
And that's still a 1-2 that I always wonder if they know, because that to me was one of those situations where I think you get caught up in coaching and you kind of forget what's actually going in front of you. Because I'll tell you this, and again, I'm the guy with the podcast. He's the guy that winning his coach. But I remember sitting there in Sacramento with people next to me saying the same thing. Why in the world isn't Boswell in there? Kirk, that was interesting, Brad.
I think there's a few things at play there. One is sometimes you do get tunnel vision when you coach. Yeah. I have been there as an assistant screaming at a head coach in a high school football game. Just run trap. It's worked every time. No, we have to keep.
Was this during your heyday at Choya?
It was in my heyday at Choya. Yeah, we were gashing Nogales with the fullback trap, and we kept going away from it. Excuse me, Douglas, not Nogales. Here's the other thing, though. But part of it is, okay, we assume we are going to pull this game out. I need Kerr Kriisa to be confident. If I pull him for Boswell, I lose Kerr for the rest of the tournament. Now, hindsight's 2020, and you're like, well, I lost the tournament for everybody.
You lost the tournament. Who cares about the next game?
But that might be it. Again, we don't know how did Boswell practice that way. But to me, the obvious thing, and I didn't know, because, again, I was watching it on a cell phone at Disney World or Disneyland. But yeah, when I noticed Boswell wasn't playing late in that game, it was like, I think that's a mistake. Because at the very least, if you're going to go down in flames in that game, hey, get Boswell confident that next year he can be that man.
All right. TLN says, when is Paulius, Paulie M, as we're going to call him on this show, when is he going to commit? I would imagine within the next week to 10 days. I don't see it being any more than that. But that will happen sooner than later.
Is it weird that because of our lack of pronunciation of Latvian and Serbian names, that basically
this is true,
the European guys now all sound like characters on the Jersey Shore?
Yeah, they do. We turned them all into Italians.
We got Philly B, we got Paulie M, we got Moke.
Yeah, seriously. By the way, speaking of Italians, Mountain Mike's Pizza. Well, that was a segue right there. Brad Allis, you've been to Mountain Mike's Pizza. This is true.
This is true.
When was the last time you were at Mountain Mike's Pizza?
A few weeks ago.
All right, there you go. Brad is a repeat customer right there. And think about it this way. When you're Brad and you got big-time job, you got the kids, you're married, you're looking for a place that's got good food and at a reasonable price, head over to Mountain Mike's Pizza or to their Mesa, Chandler, or Tucson locations to place your next order. Reminder, new diehards get a $50 voucher upon signing up. Check it out, Mesa, Chandler, or Tucson locations. And again, like we talked about, I have seen that one in Sacramento right as I was walking down the street. That's how prevalent these things are. And Illegal Pete's. Brad Allis has not been to Illegal Pete's, but he has had Illegal Pete's food. This is correct.
This is true.
All right. Now, you might say, Mike, what can Illegal Pete's do for me? Illegal Pete's can do everything for you. They got great food. It's a great environment. And you can stop into either their Tucson or Tempe locations for the house beer bucket for you and the whole crew. 5 pints for $15. Soak up the sun with a loaded burrito and crisp beer on the patio. Illegal Pete's, your go-to spot for burritos, buddies, and beer. All right, Brad. I'm late.
I may have to get out there, not take it home if I know I can get that beer price.
I'm telling you, man. Now, Brad, I'm laying down the gauntlet. I expect this year's team to be better than than last year's team, and it wouldn't surprise me if this year's team goes further than his first year's team. What say you? Am I just being short-sighted and dumb?
No. I think those are the benchmarks you're now with this program. It's a lot like the Loot programs, where if you're not top 3 in the conference, barring. Because now there's no such thing as these weird roster overhauls. You don't get caught short anymore. And if you do, it's your fault, because there's always a mid-major.
There's no excuses at this stage.
Yeah. And I think barring injury, the bare minimum for a program like Arizona is the Sweet 16.
Right.
I am not one of these people who say a team has to make the Final Four because of what a crapshoot it is. But there are some special teams that should get to the Elite Eight. But this is, to me, a team that if they finish outside the top 3 in the conference and they're not in the Sweet 16, it's been a disappointment, or something really bad happened. Injuries, illness, you know, some kind of weird scandal. But if this roster remains intact, they should be a Sweet 16 team who, if they're not at least still in contention for the league title 2 weeks out, something's wrong.
I'm a bigger Andy Enfield fan than most. Most people on there, and Kobe Thiel, I'm looking right at you. A lot of people think Andy Enfield stinks. He doesn't stink. He's done a good job there. For USC, I would actually argue you could make the case he's the best coach in USC basketball history, William Brad Allis. Is this
I would say of the Brad Allis era, which is about the Lute Olson era.
From about 60 on. Gotcha.
84, 85. He's been the most consistent USC coach.
Wins 25 games each year.
Because, you know, look at the great Bibby teams, or the
right.
They always had a dip out, you know, again, different model of college basketball where you couldn't replenish.
Right.
But, you know, they'd go to an Elite Eight and then the next year lose everyone to the draft and be 15 and 14. At 8th place. So Infield doesn't do that. Now, Infield has made one good tournament run. He's had a load of NBA talent, but he has also had a lot of one-and-done talent, which is tough to build around.
If I'm USC basketball and you tell me that year in and year out, I'm probably going to finish in the top 4 in the conference, or actually you're almost assured to, I'm taking it and I'm dealing with what else?
Yeah. No, I mean, let's be real.
Dirty Dancer, that's for you right there.
You're USC. You're not UCLA. UCLA
Right.
and Arizona, maybe Oregon now can hold themselves to higher standards. Same thing. If I told you ASU football, you're going to win between 7 and 9 games every year with the possibility. Yeah, exactly. Same thing. ASU would take Andy Enfield's success in a heartbeat in basketball. But that said, you know, he's got a low floor, but he doesn't have a high ceiling either. So what you see is kind of what you're going to get.
Jervis Williams says, how many scholarships available? Well, after Paulie M is in, we will have a full roster, which is a lot different than what we were talking about 6 weeks ago, Brad Allis.
Yeah, they'll have all 13. That doesn't mean moving forward. Obviously, I think they've got 2 or 3 seniors on the roster.
Right.
I think Umar's out. I think Caleb Love is likely out. I'm not sure who else.
All those guys, you know what's funny? All those dudes can come back, though, because of the COVID year. We could get 2 more years, theoretically, of the great Umar Ballo.
I would take – it would be interesting to see what his legacy would be at, because that'd be 4 years at Arizona.
4 years at Arizona, and I'm curious to see what he does this coming year if he steadily improves. Again, he made a big jump from his sophomore to his junior year. You go from 5 points and 3 rebounds to 14 and 8. I don't expect him to put up 22 and 11, but it would be nice if he could maybe get 16 and 9. I don't see that necessarily happening, but it could really be a tale of further progression, Brad Allis.
Well, let's say he improves by a point each year. So he's 15 this year, he's 16 next year.
Yeah.
That's 3 years between 14 and 16 points as a big man at Arizona.
Not a lot of big men have done that.
You're some rarefied air. You're rarefied
Ben Davis numbers already.
Yeah.
And Ben Davis, to me, was one of the better bigs I've seen. Granted, it was only for a year and a half, but senior year Ben Davis, I'll take every day of the week on any roster.
Of course.
Right. All right. Now, let's talk a little bit of Arizona football here. We got some news right here. Got a couple commits here we're going to talk about here in just a second. But Elijah Rushing was on campus. I get a lot of people that ask me about Elijah Rushing. What is Arizona's chances? Arizona's got a real chance here because for a variety of reasons. First of all, his brother's on the team. That's always a good thing. Second of all, Jed Fish is actually recruiting him in a manner in which he should be, as in he is making him a priority recruit. This isn't a Bijan Robinson, Kevin Sumlin thing where it's like, we can't get him. We're going to try something else. Plus, the product on the field is steadily improved. Elijah Rushing, he would be he would be easily, out of just high school rankings, the highest rated defensive player to ever sign with Arizona. Not saying he's coming here, but Arizona's got a real shot with this one, Brad.
No, they do. He's definitely got Arizona among his finalists. By all accounts, the visit over the weekend was really good. He has got a rapport with the staff, obviously the brother on the team. And, he's not quick to commit. So if his brother has a good year this year, and I don't mean good on the field, I mean good experience, that'll help. They're selling him on a couple of things. One is be a hometown hero. He can, and the potential for NIL money, which is the new landscape, as a local kid, you can start hyping him up right now.
Right.
Because I tell you what, and I don't know where he is seriously looking. I know some of but I'm going to use Alabama. He goes to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. He's another guy.
Right.
Not necessarily. He could be great on the field, but the day he shows up on campus, he's one of 30.
Nobody's saying, is that a 5-star over there? They're all 5 stars.
They're all 5 stars. They're like, oh, wait, Tucson. We had a guy from Tucson who walked on. He was pretty good.
Right. That's a great point. Maybe that's it.
He let's say he commits tomorrow. He can start doing NIL stuff now.
Right.
Assuming, I don't know what the AIA regulations are, but so A, there's that. B, again, in some ways, you're betting against yourself, but you come in Arizona and you're in the rotation from day one, if not starting. Again, you go to Alabama, you go to Clemson, you go to Georgia. You might be in the rotation, but you're probably looking at a year or two before you're ready to compete. Now, you could argue that all he has to do is be in the 3-man, 6-man rotation at DN.
Yeah, he'll get drafted.
And you'll get drafted.
Right.
That is true. But you have a chance to really showcase yourself quicker at Arizona if that is his desire. So, again, I think there's some selling points. There's also some things that are going to be really hard to beat. And let's talk about
a player that he's got and a couple of the commitments. But first, Brad Allis, are you still having sleeping problems?
Occasionally.
All right. OG's is here for Brad Allis. And not only is OG's here for Brad Allis, they can help Brad sleep. They got the Aquaberry Sleep Edition, CBN THC 2-to-1 ratio to flavor your dreams. Again, compound that specifically helps with rest relaxation. Find them at your local dispensary at ogsbrands.com. Must be 21 years up to enjoy responsibly. All kinds of stuff right now. Pink lemonade dropping on June 21st. That stuff's going to go like hotcakes right there. Check it out. And Octane Raceway and Mavericks. All right. Brad Allis, again, a man of the people, a man of the family, a family man. Tyler might be saying to him, yeah, Dad, I'd like to get out of town and go do some stuff. And Brad's saying, I'd like to get out of town too, but not out of the state. That's where you would go to Octane Raceway and Mavericks. You could book some fun this spring at Octane Raceway and Mavericks. Kart racing, virtual reality, laser tag, axe throwing, bowling, arcade, great food and drinks, tons of different events throughout the summer. Check out OctaneRaceway.com and Mavericks.com. All right, Keona Wilhite. I'm going to go on record here right now, and this is not a diss towards Elijah Rushing at all. Elijah Rushing's school offers speak for themselves for a variety of reasons. I'm going to go on record, though, in saying that Wilhite will be the best player in this class out of Tucson. I've talked with a number of Sal Point coaches about this and some observers. Just so you know, he's got an Arizona offer. He's got a Colorado offer. The majority of his career, he was kind of bouncing around from school to school, shows up at Sal Point, plays the second half of the season. And when I tell you that he is an absolute monster, the way that he is built, that's the way that he is built. He is physically a bigger kid than Rushing. Rushing, again, has the lean, narrow size. This kid's just a beast. And it would be a really nice feather in Jed Fish's cap if he could get both of them, especially coming from Sal Point. That could be like, at least on paper, getting Bijan and getting Lathan. Not saying they're going to be that, obviously, but it would be a real feather in Jed Fish's cap.
Yeah, he's an interesting player. Again, his lack of consistency at one school has hurt his recruiting.
No doubt.
But that can all be changed in one summer. You go to 3 camps and suddenly, you make a name for yourself. But, yeah, I think getting at least one of these guys is important to Arizona because – and it was a different era. And I know it doesn't seem – but one thing Mike Stoops did well was keep kids locally.
Right.
He lost out on O'Dowd. He lost out on John Romero, which ended up not being much of a loss. and he kept every other local kid he really wanted.
He really wanted. Blake Martinez was a bad miss eval.
That was a miss, but that wasn't a miss due to lack of recruiting. That was a misevaluation.
Right.
There are a couple other misevaluations, but that's obviously the big one. But for the guys they wanted, they kept home. And that goes from, obviously Brooks Reed through Kadeem Carey and then, Adam Hall and
Xavier Smith even.
Xavier Smith. And there was some guys that got big time offers. So people are like, well, what about Jamal Womble? They didn't offer Jamal Womble because they knew they'd get him and liked other guys better. Some of the there was another.
Where did he end up? North Carolina?
North Carolina. Ian Brinker, who was another one of the big guys at South Point. They didn't offer. He went to Oregon State because they knew they'd get him. But when they liked a guy, and again, not all of them panned out. Daniel Borg did not pan out. Although I think Borg actually committed to, if I'm not mistaken, now Makovic. I'm thinking. I
believe he was,
that was the run-in. But you look down the list. Not everyone made it, but the guys who made it were really good.
Right. Now, let's look at these recruits right here because this goes right into what we're talking about right here. First, you mentioned before Kaho Tuihalamaka. First of all, you might say, Mike, who is this guy? Thanks for asking. He's 6'4", 340 pounds out of Mater Dei. Now, you look at his rankings, he's a 3-star kid. He doesn't have the highest, he's not the highest rated guy in the world, but he's got an offer from Oklahoma State. He is from Mater Dei. Again, stop me if I've already said that. And he is massive. These are the kind of guys, if you're going to miss, you miss big and you miss with potential that other schools have seen as well.
Yeah, again, you can't create 6'4", 330 in a lab.
You can't.
And again, I've seen a little bit of him. He's to solidify. Might want to trim down to about 320, get strong. But it's a lot easier in many cases to get these guys into shape than it is to bulk them up successfully. Right. Again, at worst, the kid already has college size. He has size that you could flop him on the line. He goes to one of the best programs in Southern California. He's, entrenched in that Polynesian community. If you're going to miss, this is a good way to miss, as opposed to a 5'8" receiver from
CDO.
From Basha. And then again, that kid ended up being really good, but there's not that pipeline. There's a bigger pipeline traditionally to the NFL from Mater Dei than there is from South Mountain.
Well, let's look at back in the day. South Mountain used to be a spot where you could get a lot of guys. Not so much anymore.
Yeah, back in the day, Amphi cranked out NFL player after NFL player.
I'm dating myself right here.
But then Tucson got more than 12 high schools.
True, that's true. Now another guy, Brad, Sefo Aquila. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Kid out of Hayward, California. Another example. Now, he's rated as the 80th best prospect in California, but you look at his offers right there. You got Arizona, you got BYU, you got Wazoo, and he's 6'3", 220 pounds. He is a big dude. These are the kind of guys that, again, you're going to miss with. You miss on this. You don't miss with people that look like me, Brad.
No, you don't want linemen who weigh 5 pounds more than me, and that's still a big lineman in some cases. But no, you don't want. You want size, and that's what you need. And if you can add size, that's what you miss. Again, I said it before. I'll say it again. You can never have too many linemen. You can never have too many arms in baseball, and you can never have too many bigs in basketball.
Right. And you can never have too many peaks in basketball. Agreed?
Agreed.
All right, Brad. Before we sign off, where can they find you?
WSR Brad on Twitter. Should have a podcast or two going up this week. Again, All-Star Baseball may prevent that.
All-Star Baseball. Come on. All right. So how's he doing, man? He's obviously doing well if you're doing All-Star Baseball.
Well, basically his entire team went up. He finished the season hitting in the high, just under 300 after a slow start. His last start on the mound, he pitched 2 starts, but he got the win, gave up only 1 earned run in 5 innings. And they're going to need him in the 50-70 All-Star tournament because due to blind draw, we got the 5 seed out of 5 teams, so we have to play an extra game despite the fact that his team went 13-1 during the regular season.
Well, you know what? If anybody can handle it, it's the Allis family. Brad, You're the man. We will talk with you again next Tuesday.
Sounds good.
All right, everybody out there, as always, appreciate all of the chiming in. You are the ones that make this show. Be back with you tomorrow. We got Tyler Owens, head strength and conditioning coach for U of A football, coming on at 10 a.m. Be back with us. You're listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.